let's start our webinar. Okay, and I will say a few words. Bapak Ibu sekalian, selamat datang di webinar Opportunities in Indonesia After the Pandemic. Nama saya Brian, Director Cabang Indonesia di Hong Kong Trade Development Council HKTDC. My special thanks to Mr. Sandy and Mr. Andrew for their kind support to this webinar, as well as IDHKBA, InachamHK Hong Kong, and V Office for co-organizing this meaningful online event. Though we are facing unprecedented challenges in the pandemic, we're sure there are new business opportunities, just that we need some enlightenment from experts like Mr. Sandy. The HKTC will continue to do our very best to bring closer ties between Indonesia and Hong Kong. Now, without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Andrew, our moderator. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much, everyone here. I just want to thank you for all the supports, and I think this is a very precious and invaluable moments for we all come together. I think, for me, I'm based in Jakarta right now, and as a board member of the Hong Kong Chambers of IDHKBA and InachamHK Hong Kong as well, which we are delighted to keep reaching Indonesia and Hong Kong. And in fact, Hong Kong, since many years ago, has been one of the largest FDI foreign region to Indonesia. So as of 2019, Hong Kong was the fourth largest FDI for Indonesia. For the first half year, we have $1.3 billion of investment with 1,068 projects so far. And I think I would love to say that TDC and IDHKBA and InachamHK Hong Kong has done a great job, and I hope that we could keep on continuing. And before I would like to invite our honorable guests, I would also mention this amazing event happened with a good friend of mine supporting Mr. Erwin Surjadi, the board member of Junior Chambers International Indonesia, and also Mr. Muhammad Ali Afandi, chairman of Indonesia Chambers of Commerce in Surabaya. And I think this is a time that we could get together, and I'm sure a lot of you might have a lot of Q&A questions. So after Mr. Sandy's presentation, feel free to ask questions and discussions. And because this is accounts that will allow us to have more time. So basically, we aim at within an hour and a half, but definitely, we welcome more interactions here. And now that I would like to introduce Mr. Sandiaga Uno, who is a very successful businessman, investor in Indonesia, who's also the deputy former Jakarta governor. And I think with the experience and expertise, he would like to share more with our crowd here. And I'm sure a lot of our members here are from different industries, different aspects. Some might be entrepreneurs, some might be in management. And I think some are based in Jakarta or some are based in Hong Kong. But I think we all both have the same visions of reaching Hong Kong, Indonesia, and also have our passion and callings here as well. So without further ado, I would like to invite Pak Sandy to share a bit message with all of you guys. Please, Pak Sandy, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Also, thank you, Brian, for inviting me to this very prestigious webinar. And on behalf of the people of Indonesia, we would like to wish each and everyone in this webinar and social media channels who have been relaying or streaming the content today. Happy Eid Mubarak. May the festivities, the end of Ramadan and the beginning of Shawwal will bring victories to all of us against COVID-19, as well as bring us health and prosperity. I would like also to basically give our condolences to hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their lives because of COVID-19. And as we approach more than 5 million people affected worldwide, we are also seeing that many more billions of people are affected through the economic situations. The economic hardship is hitting every corner of the world, in particular some of our brothers and sisters, our fellow countrymen in Indonesia. So our thoughts and prayers to all affected by COVID, be it their health-wise or also the economic-wise. I'd like to maybe start with one positive tone because we've been hearing most negative and I guess the real fact about how COVID-19 has been really an unprecedented event. Some say a black swan event that caused the stock market, the investment community to experience some of the turmoil that have not been seen in previous crises before. And fears are growing that worldwide economic downturn could be especially deep and lengthy, with recovery limited by continued anxiety. However, we've gone through crises before. We've seen the 97-98 Asian financial crisis. We've gone through also the 2008-2009 global financial crisis. This 2020 crisis started as a health crisis, and quickly it turned to be a very worldwide economic downturn. However, we also experience that during crisis, there is always opportunity. As the Mandarin character, the Chinese character, always taught us that the word crisis is two words, which is wei qi. Wei is danger and qi is opportunity. So we are also seeing pandemic investing is one of the topics that people want to explore. What would be COVID defensive as well as COVID cyclical, sort of like investing. We need to, I guess, embrace the new normal. And the type of new normal is that pandemic investing will require adapting to the post-COVID-19 conditions and situations. And that one thing is very, very quickly becoming a norm, is that we have to quickly pivot. We have to quickly adapt and make faster decisions with very limited information. Normally, when we do investments, we like to really look at the investment opportunities, the fundamentals, and making sure we do a very, very lengthy research on the investments. However, this type of pandemic investing would not allow us to spend a lot of time on deliberations, but we need faster decisions. Although information is not that readily available, but we need to make investments that we may not be as comfortable as what we are used to in the past. Because this COVID-19 is a very new disease. We don't know the features. Until today, we have not seen vaccines being, I guess, available in the market. So it will take some time before we would be able to see the, I guess, the full brunt or the full nature of this pandemic. But history has strongly suggested that markets don't bottom when investors feel brave and confident. Market timers are not going to be able to benefit in previous crisis, because you just cannot continue to wait until the market bottoms. You need to focus on certain situations, certain brackets of time whereby you have the information, you feel that you like the sectors, you feel brave and confident, and then you pull the triggers. And I believe that pandemic investing will, because you're talking from the Hong Kong, which is one of the center of global trade, you're seeing, I guess, more and more of this pandemic investing becomes something that they would want to explore. Indonesia issued the first pandemic bond, 4.3 billion US dollar during the first weeks of the COVID-19 situations evolve. And this is something that I guess we could learn that there are appetite for investments if you package your investment correctly and you're able to provide some key thematic in relations for this pandemic. And Indonesia itself, you see the numbers, we're in the 20 of thousands. Unfortunately, more than 1,000 of our beloved family members as a country have passed away because of COVID-19. But in comparisons with other big countries, Indonesia we have to be grateful that the numbers is not that much higher. While we read that global forecast for the Asian markets is upbeat, we see some early numbers from China. We see some numbers from South Korea as well as Vietnam and India. There is some sense of optimism for reopening the economies and the possibility of further stimulus. Japan has seen that the emergency status has been uplifted with unprecedented numbers of stimulus. I think other countries will follow suit. When the returns of the S&P 500 to 17th of April 2020, we observed that the market capitalizations is a very different pictures emerge. And not long after that, you see the oil price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. So larger companies have seen clearly that their positions and their dominance in the market will be quickly eroded if they are not adapt to the new situations. And we've seen that during crisis, time and time again, that cash is king. So balance sheet that is stronger would be able to outperform companies who are not having access to liquidity. Indonesia in particular, almost the same. The stock market has finished higher in 4 straight sessions, advancing more than 125 points or 2.7% along the way. So this is one of the healthier gains we see during the pandemic situations. And I believe in the real sector too. We see investments coming in terms of healthcare, digital, e-commerce, also areas such as clean energy and preventive measures for COVID-related investments. We are seeing also investments coming in the sectors that relates to food and agriculture, which is the primary reasons why you see that Jakarta Composite Index now sits at 4,640 level, which sort of like find a new level of plateauing. And it's, I think people are looking at a higher index in the next few days coming after the Lebaran break, after the Eid al-Fitri break. Indonesia is always considered to have a natural potentials as an investment destination. And because of the huge populations and big middle class and big consuming class and quite a large and productive workforce. So I'd like to close that I'm feeling very optimistic. We have a winning potential case if we are able to adapt and handle the health crisis. And so far, the health crisis is looking at the right trajectory. Hopefully, we are soon be close or past the peak. And I guess sectors such as food, energy, and water, alongside Indonesia's natural resources, processing industries, and also consumption economics will be back, and hopefully that it will present a very good investment targets for Hong Kong investors and also with other domestic investors. Maybe that's one very hopefully upbeat assessments where we are, and hopefully we would be able to field questions from the floors. I'll return the mic back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Pak Sandi. I think it's pretty amazing when you share about, you know, where comes crisis, the opportunities. I think this is very true when, especially in this exciting and upcoming market like Indonesia. I think what we could do is, despite the challenges, is having a very optimistic mindset. And I'm sure a lot of, you know, business leaders like you and also the governments are doing a lot to facilitate it, and also very embracing with a lot of foreign investments. So just want to update every one of you. Again, some of you who just joined our webinar. This is a webinar organized by HK TDC, InachamHK, IDHK BA, and B Office as well. So I just want to welcome all of you here. I think Pak Sandi has, you know, shared a lot of, you know, very honest and very straightforward messages, and I could see that there are a lot of our audience. So today we have like over 110 participants right now, and I know some people are starting signing in as well. So welcoming, and our administrator could keep inviting them. So I've been receiving some questions from the floor, either through my WhatsApp or email, or some on the question board. So I think I would start with the first question. I think it's from Brian Chen. I think it's my buddy from InachamHK, who's the vice president of InachamHK, has been doing a lot of business in Indonesia as well. So he asked question asking Pak Sandi, do you see a need for Indonesia to develop a different strategy towards attracting foreign investment, especially post COVID-19? If so, how?
Definitely, Brian. I think we cannot offer business as usual to attract investors to come to Indonesia. We earlier believed that we have been fighting to get part of the global supply chain somewhat in Indonesia, and we have been losing more and more investments to our neighbors, also to China. But this pandemic caused us to believe that the most common denominator when people using their investments decide where they would want to invest is cost, which is one major consideration to determine where they would invest. This crisis taught us that it's not just cost, but rather, I guess, number two is risk, and number three is resiliency. Indonesia needs to promote that it's not just going to be able to provide the lowest cost possible for investments, but also able to minimize and mitigate risk, as well as providing a very resilient destinations for investments. If you see the impact to the Indonesian economy, as well as the impact of this pandemic to our health, public health situations. Secondly, we need to also embrace that it is not just the labor-intensive industries or labor-intensive investments that we want to attract, but more higher value added, that we could show that the Indonesian workforce would be able to increase their skill, their competitiveness, their competencies in order to compete with workforce in other part of the world. Thirdly, I think political stability. Indonesia have seen that its democracy is now getting more and more mature. I have participated in last year elections, and I've seen firsthand that the people in Indonesia are getting more and more mature. They want to see progress. They want to see democracy. They want to see justice and fair and equitable development coming in. And by way of attracting investments, we will be able to create jobs as well as we would be able to provide new and quality jobs. So that's pretty much how we would position and pivot a little bit our strategy. And there, I guess, certain efforts by the government, by the business sectors to create a more conducive investments climate in Indonesia to achieve that.
Thank you, Pak Sandy. Actually, I have one, it's from myself. I have one follow-up question as well, because it's something that collectively a lot of my Hong Kong Chambers members are asking. So I think right now, apart from the COVID-19, also we're experiencing kind of difficult situation because of the Sino-US trade war, because a lot of Hong Kong businesses, especially the manufacturing sectors, are actually have been investing in China for many years. And I think a lot of them are thinking about alternative markets. So basically, it's something that me as a board member has been trying to advocate as well, to encourage people coming in Indonesia. And Pak Sandy, I mean, to be honest, I think our competitors here are basically either Thailand or Vietnam for the destinations of the investment. So Pak Sandy, would you actually share a little bit about when we talk to our Hong Kong potential investors or entrepreneurs who want to come to Indonesia, what do you think is a significant competitive advantage of Indonesia compared to two countries? I think, yeah, it's a bit straightforward, but I think everyone would love to know about, and it will help them to make a more sound decisions apart from the good points that you mentioned just now. Thank you, Pak Sandy.
One key criteria would be the size of the market. It's a huge market, 270 million populations. It's one of the fastest growing middle class, and the demography is dominated by a very young, vibrant millennials who are digital natives. Is one of the most active internet and digital nations in the world. We're number 6. The e-commerce market is growing. Secondly would be the potential of natural resources that could be processed into finished goods. In the past, we have been just exporting natural resources without much value add processing capabilities. So we need to build that capabilities. Third, the last 5 years, President Jokowi's administration has been focusing on infrastructures. So we have a much better infrastructure nowadays, from factory to port and distributions, roads, power, and I guess the availability of the workforce that is relatively young and productive. Thailand and Vietnam have always been a very tough competitor, and we thank them for being a good competitions, and that would allow Indonesia's policymakers to ensure that one of the toughest situations have been in relations to uncertainty of laws. And this is something that we're going to change. We're going to make sure that people who are investing in Indonesia would feel secure, and the law is very proactively focusing on making sure that the investments are going to be able to create above average return for the investors, as well as providing good jobs, good quality jobs for Indonesians, in particular young Indonesians.
Thank you, Basani. Another question from the floor is from Mr. Bulba. He was asking, what could entrepreneur do to support a government effort to combat the COVID-19 in this situation right now in Indonesia?
There are three things that I am now advocating among entrepreneurs, that this is very difficult time for especially the people within the middle to lower income brackets. If we focus, there are two things that the entrepreneur can do, is to help the government fight the health crisis by advocating a public-private people partnership for testing. We need to expand and make sure that testing will be done on a massive scale, as well as touching not only the Java area, but the entire nations. Secondly, for entrepreneurs to educate the new normal. People who are now have to adapt that wearing face mask is a type of new normal. Making sure that you are maintaining social and physical distancing. That's part of the new normal. And making sure your area is clean and always, not only personal hygiene, but your business premise is also regularly putting in the disinfectant liquid being available in your business premise. Secondly, cost of basic food commodities. That is what entrepreneurs can help the government fight COVID-19, because right now people are losing jobs. Entrepreneurs are facing difficulties to keep people in their payroll. But on top of that, there is also pressure on cost of living that is increasing, in particular food prices. So I am appealing to all entrepreneurs to find solutions so that we can continue to provide food and basic life necessities at an affordable prices, at a stable and affordable prices for the people in general, so that their cost of living will not skyrocket. So those are the two roles I believe that entrepreneurs could focus on at least 3 to 6 months down the road, until we fully, hopefully, be able to find a vaccine and business can start be reopened under a very strict COVID-19 protocol.
Thank you, Basani. There's another question from Ms. Florentinus. She's asking, there is analysis that this pandemic has created an opportunity for Indonesia/India as an alternatives FDI of China. Since this pandemic showed how dependent supply chain of the world to China, what do you think the shift would be like?
I guess there are opportunities not only for India and Indonesia, but there are opportunities attached to every single crisis. It's how you're able to find those opportunities and position yourself to be able to benefit from those opportunities. I mentioned earlier that locating your supply chain is now going to be very critical, because in the last 20 years, there are two pandemics that started in China. And definitely it's a risk situations that people now have to factor in, as well as the resiliency issues on top of the cost and productive workforce. But Indonesia have a lot of homework to do. We need to make sure that ease of doing business, the ease of doing business ranking of Indonesia must improve, and that has to do with regulations. We need to deregulate and make sure that the regulatory environment is conducive to take this opportunity. And for companies who wants to diversify their supply chain, Indonesia should present a much more robust offering to them. And I have been advising the government. I said we need to step up and take this opportunity and not waste it, because there's a good wise man saying that never ever waste a good crisis. You need to learn how you could rise above your competitions following the crisis. Good companies will definitely be able to be stronger post-crisis if they're able to navigate and adapting to the new realities.
Thank you, Pak Sandi. Another question from our audience, Andy. He was asking, Hong Kong investors put main focus on Indonesian market economic potential, especially regarding Belt and Road policy. What is your opinion on the Belt and Road initiatives during COVID-19 in the new normal era?
Well, the Belt and Road initiatives have been much linked to some of the infrastructure build-up that the country is doing, and we definitely need to, as an aftermath of the COVID-19, need to re-establish what type of demand that the country will see post-COVID-19. There will be moderations in demand. There will be a shift towards needs-based economy rather than building an infrastructure and hope they will come. The old mantra of, and I have developed infrastructure investments for a long time, and the old mantra is build and they will come. Yes, that will continue to be true, but you need to make sure that you be very, very conservative in terms of projecting demands going forward. So those type of projects will need to make sure we reconsider, revisit, and we have to be absolutely clear and absolutely sure that these investments will be commercially viable, because we cannot rely on government subsidies going forward. We are pretty stretched in terms of this pandemic budget situations. Indonesia has just obtained a new law to allow the government to go higher than the 3% budget deficits that have been stipulated under the law. We are now would be able to borrow and would be able to allow the central bank buying the government paper in the primary market. So under this, we need to make sure that we go still on a prudent fiscal policy, make sure that more private sectors be involved in this Belt and Road initiative. In the past, it's all state-owned enterprise. I have been advocating that more and more private sectors needs to get involved, because private sectors will bring in institutional discipline in terms of financial management and innovations, as well as efficiency in the projects. Thirdly, I believe that the Belt and Road initiatives would have to present itself as a way to, number one, create good jobs, good quality jobs for Indonesians. So we need to make sure that these type of projects will be catered as employment opportunities for the Indonesia's talents. Secondly, that this projects, this Belt and Road Initiative, must address the connectivities to ensure that our distributions of food supplies and basic commodities that is needed on our daily lives be able to be provided at a stable, affordable prices. So with that, I think we could also then look at other type of infrastructures like health infrastructures, education infrastructures, and many type of projects that is not just purely hard infrastructures, but will be able to solve some of the soft infrastructures that the country would need.
Thank you. Another question from Jeffrey, who is a good friend of mine, who is also the vice chair of IDHKBA. His question is, any advice how to adapt faster to the new normal in terms of human resources for large corporates and for SMEs as well?
This is tough times, in particular for SMEs.
Yeah.
Because I was just reading some research saying that under the new normal, maybe as high as 40% of the people will not be able to will not be able to land the same jobs that they had before the COVID-19. I am more optimistic. This is something like abrupt way to accelerate your adoptions to the 4.0 industrial revolution era, whereby digitalizations, Internet of Things, robotics, as well as artificial intelligence will take some of the old-fashioned jobs away. However, there'll be, according to the McKinsey study, that out of the 21 million jobs that will be lost in the next 5 years in Indonesia, there will be 23 to 46 million emerging new and more quality jobs in relation to the digital economy, gigs economy. I was just finishing a session and interviewing the biggest YouTuber in Asia, Atta Halilintar, with 23 million YouTube subscribers. He is by far the biggest personal YouTuber Asia has seen. Now, he said that 5 years ago, nobody has thought of a career in YouTube. And now it is paying a very, very healthy compensations for people who could create good content. And this type of, I guess, the part of the new normal because of post-COVID-19, or even is just a way for us to accelerate our transformations into the digital era, would allow to this economy to open up for more jobs. And this is how SMEs and big companies also must adapt. And I'm quite optimistic that the HR following this will be a much more, I guess, thorough strategies in terms of talent acquisitions, because talent will always be very difficult to acquire in growing times. But during difficult times like this, good talents may be available. So this is a good opportune time also for HR, for big companies and smaller companies to acquire good talents.
Thank you, Pak Sandi. I think I truly agree, and which one of our greatest strengths in Indonesia right now is the digital market. I mean, I myself is in the e-commerce digital market business, and definitely I think one of the things that I would love our fellow Hong Kong Chamber members realize is it's not just because of the young and large population, but also Indonesia, one of the biggest numbers of mobile phone, smartphone users in the world. And I think this is how, when Pak Sandi mentioned about YouTuber or any other social media marketing, I think the numbers, it's amazing. And also how people are actually very tech savvy, you know, in using mobile smartphone. That's why it creates a lot of ecosystem and business around it. And I think Pak Sandi knows more than I do that the gaming, the esports are booming here in Indonesia as well. I think this is just sort of things that I think for a lot of SMEs, even from Hong Kong, could participate and take part in it. And most important is I myself, I would say that, you know, a lot of young graduates here are very talented and are very entrepreneur. And I think right now when we do talent acquisition, I think it's not just hiring someone who could just do the execution, but also, you know, being entrepreneur and creative in creating more new models and business ideas for our businesses. So I truly echo with that, with the younger population and talents here in Indonesia. We have another question from Toby. This is a different sector of industry. You want to ask Pak Sandi, what is the situation on tourism, and when does he think that Indonesia expects to open up in tourism again?
It's a very difficult time for the tourism industry, and my heart's and sympathy towards this 10% contributors to job created in the country. So out of our entire job that are being lost in this crisis, majority have come from the tourism sectors. However, we are seeing now a new way of people approaching the tourism sectors. They focus more on qualities. They focus more on experience. They're focusing also on some digital preparation. I guess part of the new normal is the features that tourism could be combined with other events like weddings, like the large meeting, incentive, conventions, exhibitions are going to take a break for a while. But smaller groups, I guess smaller than 50 groups would be more norms. And I think higher quality type of experience of the tourist is not just the quantities and numbers, as well as overflooding of beaches and mountains, but rather very good quality experience for the tourists. Airlines will also need to adjust, in particular that unless we could find a vaccine soon, I guess social distancing will force airlines to jack up the prices of the airfares, but it will now move to a different type of segments. Another type of tourism that will grow is more personalized, more customized, and more localized type of tourism. For instance, I've been to Europe, but I have not been to few of the tourist destinations in West Java. So I would probably make sure that, because Indonesia has a large domestic market, that people will also focus on domestic tourism, because I don't need to go into a plane to go to a tourist destination in West Java. We just get a drive and spend 2 or 3 days there. So I hope that by next year, once the public health situations and the risk to the spreading of the COVID-19 is pretty much contained, they'll be coming back big time. The tourism, it's going to be big time, because everybody's going to feel how they've been contained, cabin fever. So they want to go out. I want to visit this. I want to visit that. And this is where the sector must prepare itself, must focus to not to repeat the previous mistakes, like the cruising business, how they are able to prepare against the next pandemic, how they could screen. Rapid tests will be part of the new normal of people going into cruise and air travel, similar to that. So yeah, I guess I'm very excited, and you will see, Andrew, I guess potential opportunities will be available, because as people adjust, there will also be I guess jobs and investment opportunities for the people who are, for the business people, for entrepreneurs who are sharp in identifying these opportunities.
I agree, Sandy. I mean, of course, for most Hong Kong people, they love Bali. I think Bali, it's a very popular destination for events, weddings, MICE. But again, for me, I've been here in Jakarta for 2 years. I agree that a lot of beautiful places around the country, you know, in different provinces. And myself, my fiance is from Central Java, and I just realized how beautiful Central Java is as well. So hopefully after things are back to normal, I will encourage a lot more people and businesses from Hong Kong to look into it. But I also agree that after this pandemic with the new normal, I think the standard of hospitality and also tourism, I think it would actually be, you know, better off, you know, in terms of the standard and the measures. And I think, you know, definitely, I think for Hong Kong as well, like after experience the SARS in 2003, definitely you could see how people in Hong Kong more aware with the F&B business and hospitality wise. So we really hope that, because this is a beautiful country with so many beautiful places, not just Bali, I always say. So I think hopefully this will help. And also tourism, it's a very important industry for Indonesia as well, for GDP growth. But Sandy, one question from our entrepreneur here, Rudy, he said lots of companies are enduring business declining, but we still pay salary to the staffs and a lot of spending. Is there any fiscal remedy policy from government, such as tax-free or any incentive during COVID-19 period to make especially the middle and small sized businesses to survive?
Yes, there are the first package that have been issued by the government, 400 trillion worth of economic package. Large part of it was targeting the small, medium enterprises, in particular, more on the fiscal policies to relieve these companies from paying the monthly installment of their taxes. Secondly, also there are packages to restructure the loans. However, I've been meeting these companies, and you know, I'm very pretty much sympathizing with them, because they need to keep people in their payroll, and there's just no revenues coming in. I guess the next type of facilities that the government must focus on providing would be the package to provide liquidity or like working capital for companies to restart their business. Because during these difficult times, they have been eating their savings. They've been consuming the cash reserve that they would want to preserve for reopening of the economy. But because of the 3 months of inactivity, that reserve have been greatly depleted. So one way for the government to be able to provide some kind of working capital facilities for the small businesses to be able to reopen and provide liquidity for working capital for them. I guess those are the type. Now, a lot of people, in particular in the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, have been lambasting the government for not focusing on other sectors, such as big business, corporates, industry, factories. However, Indonesia's economy has been always been supported by the consumption consumption factor, as well as the small medium enterprises. That is 60% of the economy and 97% of jobs being created. So I guess the government, being prudent, they focus more on small, medium enterprises as well as household economy. I think in times to come, they will provide also packages that could be utilized by larger companies. 97, 98, and 2008, 2009, the bailout packages were mainly directed towards larger corporations. I think this time around, the government wants to communicate very clearly to the people that they want to help the mom and pop stores, the smaller businesses first, and then later on, as we progress into the next chapter of the pandemic, we would be looking at how we could revive the larger corporate sectors and as well as factories.
Thank you, Sandy. And I know that you are an experienced veteran of private equity industries. And I think we have a question here asking about, do you see from Rory, that do you see now is a good opportunity to start a private equity business at this moment?
I believe that Rory, investing cycle goes through vintage. So people, it's like when they harvest grapes, they look at vintage, what would be good year. So 2020, if you start your private equity in 2020, it will be a good year because of the crisis would allow many companies to do restructuring. And when they do restructuring, they need fresh capital. Private equity has been one provider of this fresh capital to businesses. So yes, the short answer is yes. Now the toughest or the tougher answer would be, how would you create or how would you raise your fund? Because a lot of investors are now also battling, looking at their portfolio that is greatly hammered by this COVID-19. So the challenge would be to raise your own capital. But for people like Pa Erwin, Suryadi, and many of his friends in 12 Bros, one of the fastest growing community-based investment club, they have their capital raised among themselves. So when there is an opportunity, they would be able to execute very quickly. If you rely on third-party institutional money, you would need some time to raise the much needed, we call it dry powder to invest.
Thank you. So one question from anonymous attendee. Some Hong Kong SMEs are looking for opportunity of Indonesia for new capital project. What kind of service or opportunity of this project that Hong Kong SMEs get involved? What's your opinion on that?
I would say sectors-wise, focus on COVID-related sectors, at least for the next 2 to 3 years: healthcare, health supplies, health facilities, promotive, preventive activities in relations to healthcare. That's one big segment. The second would be focusing on food and fast-moving consumer goods, soaps, disinfectants, hand sanitizers. I would say when you go into the food related, it has to be like good, nutritious food with a longer shelf life. So pretty much like frozen food, but also focus on the quality, the nutrition. I think on the food side, also protein-based business is going to be generally going to be good. Digital is huge. The market is now pivoting into the digital era. But out of the 80,000 villages in Indonesia, only 13, quite a number of them have no internet coverage. I saw pictures of students have to go high into the coconut tree to get signals. So that's a business opportunity for you because as you move more into the digital space, you need coverage. So infrastructure in relations to digital infrastructures is going to be good. Content, if you could create good content, there'll be huge market for this. Clean energy, new and renewable energy is going to be huge. People are now starting to appreciate. Andrew, if you look out your window, you could see in some days in the higher level or in the, you could see the mountains because it's very clean.
Yes.
So people are now demanding that we maintain our good air quality. And I guess Hong Kong has been known for trades. I guess the trading business that focus on processing and exporting Indonesia's specific products will also be a good investment areas for Hong Kong investors to take a look at.
Thank you, Sandy. There are two questions I want to combine together. I think our members here also, again, very interested about the positioning of Indonesia in ASEAN. So one is from our friend Brian Chem of TDC asking, what do you think of the greater strain of Indonesia in ASEAN countries? And combined with a guest here, Richard, asking, how does Indonesian government take to win some of the investment that have been going to Vietnam, as Vietnam is way ahead in manufacturing and being a part of a major global supply chain. So basically, I think here the audience also, keep concerning about how Indonesia is going to move forward in terms of competing with ASEAN. So, Sandy.
I would say the size of the market, the young demography, that's inherent to Indonesia, the political stability now as we move into a more mature democracy, recently built infrastructures, and I guess a very vibrant digital ecosystem that is now, you see the type of unicorns being produced out of this market, like Gojek, Tokopedia, and many other very good names. So as sectors are being disrupted, Indonesia will provide a much more entrepreneurial and more robust destinations for people to have their investments here in the country. And we have not been penetrated that heavily in terms of supply chain because of the, I guess, the legacy issues on laws in relations to employment laws, and this is soon will be changed. So I think it's going to be a very attractive destinations in ASEAN. And if you think of ASEAN, Indonesia is almost half of ASEAN, economy-wise as well as population-wise. So it's good that you have already invested in Vietnam or other part of ASEAN, but if you want to be truly present in ASEAN, you have to be in Indonesia.
Hey, Sandy, I personally want to ask, as us as an expat, as part of foreign chambers as well, what can we do to support the business community here and also government to actually, help Indonesia to move forward in it?
By continuing to provide good inputs, by continuing to promote the investment opportunities, by continuing to create an environment whereby we could improve our workforce on their competitiveness, on their technology literacy, data literacy, as well as the human skills. I have a startup that focuses on upscaling and reskilling Indonesia post-COVID-19, which is Rumah Siap Kerja. For you guys also by providing as a bridge to team up with local Indonesia entrepreneurs, such as the 400,000 entrepreneurs that would be willing to expand their network in the OKOC network that I have started 3-4 years ago. So I guess there's a lot of roles that foreign chambers can continue to play alongside ours for the benefit of Hong Kong and Indonesia, because and to communicate to the outside world. I have been investing in Indonesia, and so far we've been able to generate a very I guess above average market return, and a good message, words of mouth, is means much more than an advertisement in the media. When you see your other colleagues and tell that there is a great sector, it's a great place to invest, it carries more weight, and this is something that foreign chambers can do, and to promote cross trading, because people are starting to ask, is this the end of global trade? As you see the TPP and all those previous eras trading agreement or trade agreements collapsing. But I see this as a sort of like a way for economies to deal more on a bilateral basis. So when you do trade on a bilateral basis, it will be more custom between the two economies, and making sure also that we benefit equally. It's not just one party benefiting, because I do believe trade will be positive to investments. Trade will lead to investments, and investments will lead to jobs. And this is what I guess the world would need now, in particular Indonesia, is to create good jobs. Trade will lead to investments, and investments will lead towards efficiencies so that goods and services, in particular food and basic daily necessities, be affordable at stable and affordable prices.
Sandy, how do you feel your view on the coming omnibus law? I think something that a lot of foreign investors are also concerned about it. Do you see the administration right now is serious about it? And also, what do you think will be the challenges of the execution?
The law was targeting towards, and it was named Job Creation Bill, which is a good bill in the beginning. But as it went through deliberations within the government, it becomes such a humongous bill, more than 1,000 articles, so many sectors being reformed at the same time. I believe that reform would be much more effective if it's done on a small baby step. And one stumbling block by this job creation bill is to ensure that these good intentions will be met by good executions, not only at the central government level, but also at the local government level. So I think there are a lot of convincing that needs to be done to stakeholders. I have been quite critical in some part of the bill, in particular, which relate to protections for jobs, as well as equal treatment for genders, as well as on the environmental impact, and also to the local autonomies. There are big questions to be answered, but if you want to push this, I guess the safest way is to take some clusters out of the current bill as it is deliberated and maybe reintroduce it at a more opportune time, maybe in the later sessions for the parliament, so that we don't really consume too much energy, and it is actually also having a risk of destabilizing some of the, I guess, a very calm political climate that we have. Right now, we understand that the investments will only come maybe 2 to 3 years later, so we have time. Don't rush it. Let's talk it over and make sure that we hear from every single stakeholders and make sure that their inputs are being considered.
Thank you, Pak Sandy. One question from the floor is asking, it's from Gracia, and she's asking, what's your view about the soon-to-be capital in Kalimantan, and any updates or insights from your side?
The current government, as one of their legacy, that they want to start the planning as well as the not only planning but starting few steps to establish the new capital in East Kalimantan. I think it's not a new idea. Every single government have moved this idea before. However, with the limited budgets and the focus more on COVID-19, I think the discussions, implementations would be more towards later months or years. Bearing in mind that Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, have been probably identified as a new site for more than 30-40 years before actually the capital is being moved some 60 years later. So this would be President Jokowi legacy. However, the implementations and executions, we may need to plan it properly, make sure that it involves the people, also bringing the private sector so that it doesn't burden the government budgets too much, and making sure it's sustainable, it's environmental friendly, and it is going to be a capital that would send a very strong signal that Indonesia is not just about Java, but it's about the largest archipelago in the whole world.
Thank you, Pak. There's one question from the floor asking, what's your view on, actually, I don't know, I'm not sure about this, but it's called Kartu Prakerja.
All right, it's one government program that was designed to deal pre-COVID-19 to deal with the youth unemployment, because we have a youth unemployment issues and a big issues in youth unemployment, and this has been identified in the recent presidential debate in the last election. So I have strongly proposed that we have a program, a government program to target this issue and provide trainings for young Indonesians to get the necessary skills so that they could be a competitive workforce, and it would enable them to land in good jobs. And President Jokowi's government, after they won the elections, they used this ideas to also bring in the online or digital ecosystem in. Now, the problem started during the COVID-19 that the government is using this program to deliver cash to people who just lost their jobs. Unfortunately, part of the cash that is available in this program is also being used for online training by videos. And this is highly criticized by the people. I think, my opinion, it is a good, again, it's a good intention, but it has to match the current need post-COVID, because this program was designed before COVID-19. So if you want to make sure that the program would be applicable for the people who lost their jobs during COVID-19 and would be able to reach close to 6 million unemployed, you really need to socialize, educate the people, revisit the program, also do testing to make sure the effectiveness of this program. So it's too early to judge. Don't rush things. It's just a beginning. I think 200,000 already delivered the first phase and another 200,000 in the next few months. So we just have to see the effectiveness of this program. A lot of people worried that this is a way of poorly governed a program that is rushed to push cash to this unemployed. And it may not be the right vehicle or maybe not the right program to achieve that. So we'll just have to be open-minded and review the result of the program in the weeks to come.
Sandy, thank you so much. I think it's amazing. I think we cover a lot of topics, from business to policy to, forecasting a future. And I think, today it's been a very successful event for over 100 participants from our members. And I think it's great inspiration. And I'm sure that down the road in the future, whether it's IDHKBA, TDC, or InachamHK Hong Kong, as part of foreign chambers, we will work closely, and hopefully next time we meet in person over some Indonesian amazing coffee. And then I'm sure that there's a lot that we could do together. And I strongly encourage all of our members, our participants here to stay healthy, and also, encourage, as Pa Sandy say, I think it's important as word of mouth of our credential to share about Indonesia in a more, comprehensive way. And I'm sure that it's still a lot of opportunities here that we welcome everyone, to get involved. So Pa Sandy, I'm truly, again, on behalf of organizer today, really thankful, for your time and your precious sharing, because I think we put a lot of pressure on you because you're the only speaker here. And then I know that you have to rush for another meeting. So, truly, terima kasih.
Thank you very much. And to take up your offer, and since you talk about tourism, I have small investments in coffee plantations in Central Java. And because of your fiance from Central Java, we would like to invite you to this Mesa Stila. It's a small
My pleasure.
plantation resort in between Semarang and Yogyakarta. So hopefully,
beautiful. I would love to, Pa. Thank you very much, Pa.
Tourism that we could do, and we could invite some other members of.
Thank you, Pa. My pleasure. Thank you so much, Pa Sandy, again. Thank you so much. And I'll pass the time to Brian again. Thank you. Thank
you, Andrew. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Pa Sandy and Pa Andrew. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of this webinar. Thank you again for joining us. And we'll have more upcoming webinars, and hope you will join us again. Thanks again. Bye-bye.